Hey kiddies, it's Triple Feature Tuesday once again, and this week we're going to look at two actors that have played the same role in one movie. That is to say, the two actors have famously played the same character in different movies, but through happy chances of casting are meeting each other in a separate movie. After having played the famous characters. Our menu is going to include Red 2, the score, and the remake of Sleuth. Now, Red 2 has the whole gang from Red 1 back together again. Bruce Willis, Mary Louise Parker, John Malkovich, with a whole bunch of other people, including, this time around, Anthony Hopkins is playing our bad guy. Anthony Hopkins has at least one scene where he meets up with Brian Cox, reprising his role from Red 1 as some sort of Russian, muckety-muck bureaucrat or, intelligence operative. Now, Anthony Hopkins is famous for playing Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. And by famous, I mean he won the Academy Award for playing, the creepiest guy that's ever existed on film. But what many might not know is that Brian Cox played the original Hannibal Lecter in the Michael Mann film Manhunter, based on Thomas Harris's novel Red Dragon. And while Manhunter is a great film, if only in comparison to the just dreadful Red Dragon, Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter did not set the world on fire the way Anthony Hopkins did, but Brian Cox did bring a lot of just creepiness and definitely had the same type of intelligence coming through. He was a psychopath, but not the garden variety horror movie type psychopath. He was a real thinking, devious bad guy, much like Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins had the advantage of Silence of the Lambs has more for Hannibal to do than Manhunter. But either way, both of them were just brilliant in the role, and in at least one scene, I'm pretty sure it's just one scene when the whole gang gets to Russia, they meet up and they're face to face, and it's, oh my god, there's Hannibal, and they're there, and it's, really neat for weirdos like me. Like, as we progress, we're going to be increasing the amount of interaction between our actors and, to a certain extent, the quality of the film. Frank Oz's The Score is a pretty good heist film. It's not a great heist film, mainly because, at the end of the day, you're never really concerned about whether or not Robert De Niro is going to get away with the loot and or, what's going to happen with Edward Norton. The real reason to watch this movie is because you get, 90% of your film is Edward Norton and Robert De Niro planning a heist together and, executing the heist. And who doesn't love a good heist film? Now, bankrolling the whole heist is none other than Marlon Brando. Now, Marlon Brando won 2 Academy Awards, one for On the Waterfront, and one for Vito Corleone in Francis Ford Coppola's adaptation of The Godfather by Mario Puzo. In Godfather Part 2, which features extensive flashbacks to a young Vito Corleone, played by Robert De Niro, who also won an Academy Award for the part. And it's great because it's one of those times where, you can compare Brian Cox's and Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter. Because of the age difference with the Vitos, you don't have to compare them. They can coexist comfortably. And it's not one versus the other. Granted, Robert De Niro, through most of the film, is not aping, but taking cues from Marlon Brando's performance in the previous film to great effect. It's Robert De Niro in The Godfather Part 2, Marlon Brando in The Godfather Part 1, and in this one, it's fun to see them together. Not unlike it's fun to see Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in Heat, because they were playing so similar characters finally together. Incidentally, Robert De Niro had tried out for Michael Corleone, but did not get the role, obviously. In The Score, the Marlon Brando scenes are just a hell of a lot of fun. Granted, this was Marlon Brando's last film, so he had just all of his bad habits in full force. I don't think he memorized any of his lines and was just kind of doing all sorts of hijinks. I think he was like actively trying to piss off Frank Oz. Like he was calling right. He referred to Frank Oz as Miss Piggy on the set through pretty much the whole time because let's be real, Marlon Brando was a complete asshole. He was a brilliant actor, but what an asshole. However, the scenes with Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando are a delight, if not only just because it's these two actors together, but because at the end of the day, both of them are, well, both of them. Robert De Niro is, and Marlon Brando was, a brilliant actor, and so they just riff off of each other beautifully through the whole time. And Marlon Brando's character is pretty interesting because you really don't know where he's coming from in terms of is he on Robert De Niro's side or not through the bulk of the film. So that adds, a nice little element of mystery to it. Now, finally, we have the Kenneth Branagh directed, Harold Pinter scripted remake of the older film Sleuth. And now, this movie is essentially a cat's cradle of movie references, and it's going to take me a few minutes to untangle the whole thing for you. So, in this movie, you have a young man played by Jude Law that has been having an affair with an older writer's wife, the writer played by Michael Caine. And he has come to Michael Caine's home to try to get him to agree to a divorce so that he can continue stooping Caine's wife, and Caine's wife can get Caine's money. Now, Michael Caine and Jude Law have both famously played Alfie at one point. Alfie, what's it all about? Alfie, I'm not gonna lie, I've never seen either version of it. I need to get on that. I've done a lot of remedial Michael Caine in the past few years, but I haven't gotten to that one, so I'm not going to speak to it. What I can speak to is that in the original movie Sleuth, Michael Caine played the young suitor role to Laurence Olivier's older husband. And so not only do you have Alfie on Alfie action, but Michael Caine has now switched roles from what he did before, which is also the second time that Michael Caine has taken a different role in a remake of a movie that he was famous for in the beginning, because he has a small part in the hideous Sylvester Stallone remake of Get Carter. So amidst all of that, we have this two-man pseudo-mystery play redone for the movies. And a lot of people didn't like this movie. I enjoy it a lot, if only for the interactions between Caine and Jude Law, but because I think the story really works. And it's not an exact remake, but it's not a complete reimagination either. They keep enough of the stuff to make it familiar, but they add enough to make it really, really interesting and a hell of a lot of fun. So, these are three movies where two actors that were famous for playing the same role are interacting as not the same role. Red 2 with with our two Hannibal Lecters, Brian Cox and Anthony Hopkins. The Score with our two Vito Corleones, Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando. And Sleuth with our the remake of Sleuth with our two Alfies, Jude Law and Michael Caine. And man, this got really complicated, but it's a lot of fun to watch all of these movies. So do that. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you guys next week.